I had, in 1944, I had gone to camp, youth camp there for a point, and I really liked that. It was really great Bible teaching, a lot of good fellowship with kids, you know, from all over the Southern Oregon area, different churches, and of course we also had to bring our own food stamps because we were rationed everything, had to bring so much for meat and so on and things, sugar and stuff like that. So I had gone, when I asked the boss if I could take off, of course he said, no, we need you here because they were shorthanded during the war. I said, well, I'm going to go. He said, well, you won't have a job. And I said, well, I'm going to go. So I went, and I had a job. He didn't get a job. But then the next year was 1945. That was just before the war ended. When again, and this year, climbed on this hay truck that was going from Klamath Falls to Ashland and Medford. And I climbed on the hay truck, and here were these other kids. There weren't very many guys, but here were a bunch of girls, and Mom was one of them sitting up there with her hair in braids around her head, great big blue eyes about that big around, you know. And so that's how first time we ever saw each other. And I got acquainted then the next.
But while we were on the truck, I could see all the other girls say, "There's a nice guy. I think I'll go sit with him." And I could see him backing in the corner, and I thought, that's the kind of guy I like. He didn't like that when they were flirting with him. I'd be quiet, I'll get him, and I did.
So we ate mostly, you know, we had these bigger tables and stuff in, just rude tables in the shop. They didn't have a dishwasher. Everybody took your dish and went through a line of stuff to clean up and Clorox and stuff. But I don't know how it was, but by the next evening as I was walking down the aisle for chapel, why I see this seat is open right beside Juanita. She's next to the end seat and it's open, and so I think I walked down and I came back and I'd ask if I could sit there. So
how do you suppose it was open? Because I took this much space, but as soon as I saw him, I scooted over. After all the girls had already sat down.
That's when you started eyes in the back of your head, wasn't it?
Yeah, as usual. So that was how we began to get acquainted. And by the time we went home, of course, that was the end of July. And about, what was it, the 11th of August that the bomb was dropped. I don't remember what the exact date. And so we had, I had the day off from work. She didn't. She was doing some babysitting. But anyway, that was the end of the war. And we dated some then through the summer. I had a Model A coupe with, it was well, actually it wasn't a coupe, it was a two-door, and you folded the seat down so you could get inside the old Model A. And so we dated a few times, and then I had to leave for college, and then of course after that I get my notice that I'm going to be in the Army. I think we saw each other maybe at Thanksgiving or something.
One time.
Yeah.
And I was gone by the next time you
Yeah,
came.
and then by the next time, so then I went back in the Army, back on duty, and then her folks decided that they had moved to Alaska, and her dad bought a Studebaker truck. The first one that came to town, and I don't think he cared what kind it was, but didn't have a bed on it or anything, but he bought it and built a bed on it. And they ended up loading up with the 6 kids and the dog and taking off. And when would you maybe?
We left about the
August
20th, 27th.
Yeah, and what 3 weeks I think you were on the road.
Well, almost 4 weeks before we got there.
Then in 1946 or 47?
46.
46.
Yeah, that was the first year the highway was open for civilian traffic. Before that, only military went over the Alaska Highway. And so they had permit number 35. There were 50 vehicles the first year, and they were the 35th one over it. And went one stretch several days without seeing any other people at all.
Or a road sign or any sign of anything except occasional bear or something. Or moose.
They made you take extra gas. They made you take extra different parts so that if you broke down. But the Studebaker was new. Of course, it was slow with that big load. But not only that, they didn't have, in those days, these were army bridges. You came up to the river and you wound your way down, cross the river, back up again. It isn't like now everything's high bridge.
No.
So it was very slow. You're probably only averaging maybe not even 35 miles an hour with all that load. And so they made their way to the valley and got there in time for the potato harvest as they were looking, and they had planned the idea of homesteading, but when they got up there they found here were these properties available. It was foolish would have been to start from scratch, as well. So they found this place out on the Wasilla Creek
Road, Wasilla Creek Road.
Yeah. And what did they pay for it?
$4,000, and we had 120 acres, and I think only 20 acres was cleared. And we had our own lake, our own creek, which at that time of the year was wall-to-wall salmon. You could just go stand in the middle and take a gaff hook, and that was your immediate food for meat until about midwinter we got a moose.
Her dad had always wanted to farm. He never owned his own property coming from Arkansas, and then later living in California. He worked on ranches. He did a lot of different things. In fact, when they left there, Bernie, California, he was firing boiler for his big sawmill. And so he was well acquainted with boilers and firing. And so they got to Alaska, and he got a job with the government with the base, firing boiler.
In the hospital.
Yeah, at a hospital, yeah. And so that was a good deal. He had a good job. Only problem was about 50, 60 miles out there, and it was, the roads weren't all that good, and there would be times when the weather would not permit him to come make the trip back home, and it was turned off 50 degree below weather that first winter. So they had all this hang up, he couldn't get home. They were working, and they had potatoes. Finally, they shot a moose that kept sleeping nearby the house there. So they shot a moose, and Roger did, and they put it up in the barn. Of course, it's freezing, so no problem that way at all. And that's how that old house, that log house, didn't give much. It didn't give an awful lot of resistance to the cold. The cold just come right through the logs and things. And they had wood stove, and they had an oil stove, didn't you?
Wood and coal, because
Coal,
coal
yeah.
was essentially
That's
free
right.
because they were mining coal, and every time the train went around the curve, they were loaded so heavy it'd fall off, and they didn't care who came by and picked it up. So.
Yeah, the Jonesville coal mine was up in the hills there. So they got by that winter, got through it, and by school was kind of a thing. The bus came to
Yeah,
the
we had
road
bus
right there
service. Uh-huh.
in front of your place and all as well.
But the high school just had 16 kids in it, and the other end of the building was the grade school. And when the grade school teacher didn't come, I got to go be the teacher for the day. I always thought that was kind of fun. And mostly we just had reading, writing, and arithmetic, so I didn't have chemistry or anything like that. First year biology, first year algebra, And even then, the teacher never had taught algebra, and so it didn't take us long to figure out, well, he's got the answer book right there. He doesn't know a blooming thing about it. So occasionally a kid would cheat and go look at the book.
I could.
But not much. But I was the newcomer, and of the 16 kids in school, 3 of them were McDonald's, myself and Roger and Raymond, and the total number of girls were 4. So I had a ball. And all the girls said, you didn't have to date if you went anywhere. You just all went as a group of 3 or 4 or 6. And so that was fun. And Dad wrote me every day. It's a wonder I didn't marry the mailman.
So now you're out of college and you've been drafted. Mom's moved to Alaska?
Right, I went in January, and I got out. I was in just a little over a year. They had a program, if you'd been in college before and you wanted to return to college, they'd let you out early. So quite a bunch of us took that up. And so I got out in like February or into January. I got out, and I went to work for a guy that lived right close by, Newton. He had a printing stuff, and he also made model trains and had kits to put them together. And so I did a lot of assembling of the kits, and I could take dictation. I'd taken shorthand in high school, and I did a lot of correspondence for him and stuff like that. And I worked there for some time, I don't know how long, but then eventually I got on up at Prospect with the outfit that my brother Everett he was driving truck for him, logging outfit, and I worked up there through the rest of that summer and part of the winter. We didn't work the whole winter, we worked part of it, and that was some job setting chokers. I never recommended. I look back on my life and that experience, and on the boat I'll tell about a bit. When you're young, you never think about, you never think about getting yourself killed, but you're in a lot of dangerous situations. Choker setting, you have to, the logs have been cut, the fallers have put the trees down, cut them into the proper length. Somebody has to take a choker, which is a heavy cable, and it's got a knot thing on the end of it, and somebody has to put that underneath that log and snap that in there, and then the cat can come along and pull it down to the landing, put it on the truck. Well, you grab up your chokers and you run back and forth. It's hard. It's usually steep. You're usually hardly anything on the level. You're almost up and down, and you hook those things up. And of course, you got the cat drivers got to be careful too, because if he moves too quickly while you're in there, you could get yourself hurt. But I had a couple of experiences. One of them, I was setting a choker, and I was quite a ways away from where the cat was. This cat was working, but he was building some road down below me, so I didn't really pay much attention to him. But as I got to this log, and I couldn't get the choker under that side, so I jumped up and I ran around and dropped down on my hands and knees to put the choker under the side. Well, just as I got up that way, the cat, he hit a tree of some sort here, and it hit something there, and this piece about this big around came up to wham right at the end of the log. By seconds, I would have been between that thing and the log, at the end of the log. I mean, and it was so fast, even at the moment, it didn't quite dawn on me how close I'd come to probably getting both legs crushed, just like that.
Yeah.
And other times like that, you'd have accidents with equipment. It was during the winter. It was a messy job, you could put on rain clothes to keep dry, but you'd get so warm inside that you'd be just as sweaty inside as you would have been. It had just rain on it as well. And cold, a lot of times we would build a fire if we could somewhere in the Shafer setters, so that if we had the little break while the cats took the stuff down, we could throw some stuff on there. And the boss frowned on us using diesel oil, because that's part of his profits. But you couldn't hardly get a fire going. We'd look all around to find as much dry wood or pitch as we could. But we managed to steal enough diesel to keep the thing going. And I think he knew it. He could walk around and smell it probably. And one time, he was a real safety conscious boss. I really appreciated him. The equipment he put out the equipment was always well maintained. It had tops so it covered, and everything. And he was very, very careful and always reminding us of safety measures. So this particular day, one of the cat skinners was sick, so Louis was filling in for him. And he came up to us as we were standing there, a bunch of us, I think there were 3 of us there. He came up to us and he got off and talked with this real nice guy. And he said, you want to watch out, you never know about these limbs and things that are down here. So they can be treacherous. And he reached over with his boot and he kicked this one limb. And that limb just popped just like that and whacked him right across the shins. I mean, just bang like that. And he bent way over and you could see him gasp and everything. And he stood up and we were saying, what do? You don't laugh. and he goes on down to the cat and gets on, and I saw him a month or so later. I was stopped at his house to pick something up, and he said, he started laughing about that. He said, I just could hardly keep the control. He said, I got on that cat and I just screamed bloody murder. Really heard it. So there was always something like that could happen. And it's just a wonder that those days, you're out in the mud and everything. The one injury I had was bad. We were moving the landing, and they'd have these slabs of log about this wide and this thick, and for the trucks to run on, so they wouldn't sink down into for it. And so we were moving the landing, and we had to put those big old heavy planks on this flatbed truck so they could take it to the next spot. So there were 3 of us to do this, 3 young guys, and I had the far end, and we're picking this up and toss it on. Well, you always do this. You should do it in unity. Make sure you're all together, 1, 2, 3. They threw theirs before they let me know they were going to do it. So I caught the brunt of it with my hands up like this, and my back went out. And I just collapsed there in the mud. I lay there quite a while, and then they kind of hauled me over to a tree, and I leaned up there. I could hardly get my breath, and I knew I couldn't get up and go. So a little while later, my brother had his load on, and he took me down to his house. And they had gone to a chiropractor in Medford that they liked real well. I'd never gone to a chiropractor. And so I finally got enough pain pills in me that I could get in that old Model A and drove down from Prospect to Medford. And I got into, the guy let me in real good. And he did I never had anybody treat me quite like that before. He kind of gathered under my legs, under my shoulders, and boy, just like that, I could breathe again. It was just amazing. But that was an injury that plagued me for a number of years. If I ever got in a place where I was lifting, I had to remember not to do it. I had it happen one time when we were in Alaska. I was working up there in the summer, and we were putting rail. Why they would put rail on a dump truck, I don't know, but that's what they were doing, running pieces of rail. So there'd be about 6 of us running this railroad stuff up there. And I got up, and all of a sudden I thought of that, but it was too late. and I had to find a chiropractor. I had a time or two like that, but afterwards, but finally it healed up, so I didn't have that problem anymore. The muscles get strong enough to go. So that was one of my experiences in the woods that didn't. And there were things about the working in the woods. The guys were all, they're pretty macho. Those you got loggers, you got mostly we were around truck drivers and the landing crew and all the people doing crazy things. We had an old McVeigh truck that was used to raise the logs up so that the trucks could drive under it and you'd let it down in there. And so it was, but it was always muddy and slick, and those are dangerous things, the pulleys. Well, one day I didn't see it, but his friends saw it at lunch hour, right before lunch hour. This kid, he was probably only a couple years older than I, and kind of a nutty little guy anyway. But anyway, he was running this thing, and when suddenly something jerked and pulled, and the whole pulley just popped right off of that thing. And so, Peanuts they called him, and he just immediately when that happened, without any thinking at all, he just started running as fast as he could in the mud. Fortunately, he couldn't run very fast in that mud. Ran right straight ahead, and that whole huge pulley fell down about 2 feet in front of him. He just didn't get there in time. It's just all it was. Just that those are the kinds of things that can happen. And I've had a number of friends. One of my friends that I grew up went to school, started school with at Bedford, and later we were in the Army together. Alfred was his name, and he was a great athlete and really a skill. He could box. He was just anything he could do athletically. And when he got out of the Army, he went to Falling, be a logger, and I don't know how many years, but 4 or 5 years. One day a widowmaker got him. He cut something, and when he cut it, it hit something else, and it took his life. It's like that. That's a tough way to make a living. That's amazing to me that a guy like Fred could work all those years without serious accident.
Yeah.
Amazing how they had one eye.
Right, Fred.
He only had one eye.
Yeah.
As well. So logging wasn't my profession. I look back now. And so anyway, at the end of that summer, at the end of that time, that spring, I decided I wanted to go back to Alaska. And so
Would that have been your first trip up there? Was that your first trip to Alaska?
Yeah, 47, yeah. 47, so and I didn't know exactly how I'd get there, but it turned out that that young fellow that was a student preacher that baptized me, he and his wife were selected by the Northwest Christian College missions class to go up to Alaska and hold vacation Bible schools. Well, his brother was my real close buddy. We palled around together a lot. And so he was going to go too. He was going to go work in a cannery in Ketchikan. And so I said, well, I'll go along, yeah. How are you going to go? Well, we've got this friend. His name was Ray King. And he was one of those really remarkable people, Chinese. And droll face. I'm just amazed at him. I never heard him get upset or get mad. He was evidently had some money because he had this 36-foot boat, and he was a photographer. He had some expensive cameras, but I guess that's how he made his money. I don't know what it was. Anyway, he was great. Well, okay, come on, So here's the couple, and Ray and Max and myself, and we start out on this 36-foot boat. Well, I'm just innocent as can be, and I assume that anybody that's got a boat and head for Alaska knows what they're doing.
And where did you go? Where did you depart from? What harbor did you leave from?
Oh, we left from Seattle. Yeah, we left from Seattle there, and so I'm just assuming he knows what he's doing. he doesn't have a clue. He's a deadhead navigator. Just go, this looks like what's on here, let's go there. So one night we got up in Skagit Bay, and he ran aground in the mud, and we had to sit there and wait until the tide came in, floated us off. So we then we went across the strait there from Seattle. We went over to Nanaimo, the island. On the island, it's
Vancouver.
yeah, Vancouver Island.
Yeah, the north
Yeah,
end.
okay, Nanaimo, wonderful little city. We piled around there for a day or two for getting supplies. And then it was 18 miles across this strait, Charlotte, I think it's called, and then we'd land at this salmon place on the coast, a little village. So we get out there in the middle. It wasn't rough, it was bouncy. Engine quits. And Ray works on it. I don't know, he's not really a mechanic, but somehow he got it started again. And it was nice that he did, because we didn't see any other boats or anything. So we pull into this place, and the tides. You have to understand that along the Alaska, along that channel, the tides are very extreme, and you have to. A lot of times you have to plan your trip by where the tide's going to be there. So we pulled in there, and we needed gas. And Ray's talked to. They said, "Well, you have to gas up tonight, because you'll have to leave real early in the morning on a high tide." So we were going to gas up. We pulled up there, and Max took the bow line. I took the stern line. Ray went up to pay the bill, and the couple were on the boat, and so they got the gas all filled up, and Ronnie pressed the starter, and boom, the boat just blew in two.
Oh.
Because what they didn't realize was the bilge pump was not working properly, so it didn't exhaust the gas fumes, and so they build up in there. And I'm not kidding when I say it blew it into it, just opened it up like that lengthwise.
Huh.
I don't know how it knocked me flat on my back, and the explosion, and he broke a bone, a small bone in his foot, but they both got right off. But we didn't have time to grab any luggage or anything. Everything just sank. Well, you have to realize here that that like I say, that high tide. So somebody was smart enough to run alongside and hook onto that and pull it closer to the shore. Otherwise, it would have been way out there.
Yeah.
So the next, nothing more we can do. So the next day, when the tide is out, we go down to this boat, and I found my old suitcase, and it was
Which was brand new when he
Yeah.
started, his
Well, I had
graduation
been
present.
brand new then, and we drug our stuff up. I didn't have a lot of things anyway, and but Ray, the only things that were missing were 3 expensive cameras. They never found them.
Oh.
They disappeared completely in that thing. And but you know, you'd say, well, this guy would probably say, well, let's turn around and go back to Seattle. No, we're going to go on to Alaska. And so a few days later, we got everything cleaned up. We caught a coastal steamer down to Vancouver, and Ray and Max, and well, all of us, we went to Ketchikan. And Ray went on somewhere, one of these children's home he's worked with in the Presbyterian Church. And so we stayed there. I stayed there a week or so. I don't know how. I helped him with vacation Bible school there at Ketchikan, a little church there. And then I caught a steerage passage on up to Seward from Ketchikan. Now, steerage rather, is where you live. You eat down with the crew, down inside the ship, and just common, a lot of good food. They make good food, but you sleep down there and you eat down there.